Hi there. It's July the 5th, and we're continuing our progress through the Acts of the Apostles, Luke's sequel to his Gospel. And we are in chapter 23, reading verses 11 to the end of the chapter in verse 35. We find Paul then in Jerusalem. He's been defending his faith to his people, but they have rioted and risen up against him to the extent that Claudius Lysias, the tribune, has taken him to the Antonia fortress under arrest to keep him safe, to keep him from being torn to pieces. While he's there during the night, Paul has a vision from the Lord. The Lord appears to him and says to him, "Be encouraged. You've given your testimony here in Jerusalem. You are going to be testifying for me in Rome." And this kind of sets the scene for the last part of the book of Acts that is coming. Paul's journey under arrest as a prisoner, but taken eventually to Rome. Some people among the Jews, about 40 men of the Jews, decide to make a pact together to kill Paul. They want to do away with him. He's offended against their traditions, and so they take a vow that actually involves not eating or drinking until Paul is dead. They actually try and get in cahoots with the Sanhedrin, with the council, and they say, all you have to do is to get Claudius Lysias, the tribune, to send Paul back again to us for more questioning. Say you want to hear his case more closely, and when they're bringing him down, just before he arrives here, we will kill him. However, there's been a listener into this plot, and this is Paul's nephew, the son of his sister. Not given his name, but he comes to Paul in the Antonia and tells him what's being plotted. And so Paul sends his nephew to Claudius Lysias to speak personally with him, and Paul's nephew tells Claudius Lysias the content of the threat against Paul. Claudius now takes decisive action. He's decided that it's time to get Paul out of Jerusalem to calm things down there. So he has 200 soldiers plus 70 cavalry and backup troops take Paul, or send Paul out that very night to Caesarea, which is, remember, on the coast. It's the headquarters of the Roman occupation in Palestine. And so they leave at 9 o'clock at night. They're going towards Caesarea. They stop actually overnight at Antipatris, which is about halfway between Jerusalem and Caesarea. And there the soldiers return to Jerusalem, and the cavalry continue to conduct Paul the next day on to Caesarea. And there in Caesarea, Paul will be examined by the governor, whose name is Felicos, and Claudius Lysias writes a letter to Felix telling him the whole case, telling him that he has allowed Paul to be examined by the Sanhedrin, but he's found actually that the Sanhedrin, this council of the Jews, are accusing him under their own religious laws, but that Paul has not done anything worthy of death or imprisonment. But he's sending him up, because it's such an important case and because there's such a sensitivity politically, he's sending him to the governor for the governor to arraign him and to examine him, which will come later. And so Paul finds himself, after this journey, imprisoned in Herod's praetorium, Herod being the king of this area under the Roman puppet ruler, really, but he's being held in a Roman prison. The thing that really strikes us from this reading is that Jesus has appeared to Paul and has told him to be encouraged. Even as this is all unfolding, Jesus has said, this is your calling. Your calling is, as you've given your witness here in Jerusalem, so you are being called to give your witness eventually in Rome. Paul can rely on this word from the Lord, and this will see him through the next period of time. This will see him through imprisonment, through arraignment, through shipwreck, through all sorts of things. He will see the Lord actually leading him to a place and space to be able to share more the good news of Jesus. Have a very good July the 5th.